Hello, everyone, and welcome to At Barrons. I'm Andy Serwer, and welcome to our guest, Peter Jackson, CEO of Flutter Entertainment. Peter, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, nice to see you too.
So Flutter owns FanDuel and other sports betting platforms around the world. On the one hand, it's a simple business. On the other hand, it's a complicated business. Do you agree? Tell me about it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, look, FanDuel is an important part of Flutter. And here in the US, we're the market-leading business for sports betting and gaming. You look at us globally, and Flutter typically owns the market-leading business in all of the major markets around the world. We trade under different brands, but the umbrella, the parent company, is called Flutter.
So revenue growth has been stellar, Peter, $2.7 billion in 2019 to $11.7 billion in 2023. Want to talk more about that. But maybe you can tell us about the state of sports betting in the United States right now. Where do things stand?
Well, we can go back to the 14th of May when PASPA was repealed.
What's that?
And that was essentially the thing that switched on sports betting in the US as we see it today. It conferred on the states the rights to make a decision as to whether they would allow sports betting to happen or not. And the first state out of the gates was New Jersey. So FanDuel was up and running by the football season in 2018 when sports betting was legalized. And since then, we got ourselves to a point where a large chunk of the US population can now bet on sports. It's not available everywhere yet. And FanDuel is the market leader. We benefit from the collective knowledge and expertise of the rest of Flutter. So we helped us sort of supercharge the business by bringing people, technology, and expertise into the market. But the team here have done a brilliant job.
And so, again, just focusing on the United States, about 2/3 of the states, and presumably there is activity in those states to pursue that even more, have more states be legal. But how do you prevent, or how does the government prevent someone in state A from sort of setting up an account in state B and betting?
There are very tight restrictions on how you can actually use your sort of cell phone to get on and bet on sports. So actually here in Manhattan, when New Yorkers were not allowed to bet, it hadn't the legislation hadn't passed, but you could in New Jersey. You'd actually have to travel across the bridge and be a meter past the halfway point on the bridge, so you were definitely in New Jersey before your phone would register using geolocational technology that you were very precisely then into New Jersey. And so, it isn't just where you tell your phone you can't spoof it using VPNs or those types of things. Your phone triangulates cell phone towers and various other things to work out very precisely where you are. And that determines whether you are in a place where you're allowed to bet on sports.
You guys said you're the number one player in the marketplace. There are competitors, DraftKings. How do you differentiate yourself from others, in particular, say DraftKings? Well, from a customer standpoint, how is it different?
It's true for FanDuel, and it's true for all the other brands that we operate around the world. We're a challenger brand. Right? We are absolutely focused on delivering a fantastic experience for our customers. And I think that's what differentiates us here in the US, but in all the markets around the world. We're really focused on offering the best product. It has to be really easy to use, really fast for people to access. Last year, we will have taken 4 billion bets across all of our platforms. So we're, you talked about us being a complex business. I mean, we effectively sold as many items as Amazon did, right? And so making sure that we can make all that inventory available on our sites, making it easy for people to discover what they want to get on and bet is not easy. And the team do a brilliant job of making sure that customers can find what they want, access it, and get their bets on.
You talk about that global footprint and all the different brands. Why have all those different brands, Peter? Why not just Flutter?
We've built this business up over a long time, typically by acquiring a local hero brand. FanDuel is a great example of it. It's a business that was operating here in the US, operating the DFS business, daily fantasy, before sports betting was legalized. We decided we would acquire that business before PASPA was repealed. It had great brand recognition. It had a big established group of customers on the platform. we could then bring our technology, the knowledge, the know-how, the people to help supercharge the learnings around sports betting. So we're not going to throw away all the heritage of the FanDuel brand. And the same is true in Australia with Sportsbet. It's a very well-known brand in that local market, offers a brilliant experience for Australians. It's true for Paddy Power, the Irish business that we operate, that operates actually in the UK and Ireland. Sisal in Italy. These are all fantastic, well-known brands in their local markets. And we'd never throw away that brand heritage to have a global brand. It would make a few people's lives easier, but it would make it much worse for all of our customers.
You mentioned the company's been around for a while. I think I read since 1988, correct? And it seems like it's such a new thing here in the United States. I gather it's been going on for quite some time overseas. What about those early years, number one? And number two, where does the name Flutter come from? What does that mean?
Well, the name Flutter, in English, it's a colloquial term for having a bet. So
in English.
In my English.
Not American English.
In my English. My English, and
that means making a bet or a bet.
Having, if you have a flutter, you're having a bet.
Got it.
Right?
Okay.
So you have a flutter on something. I realize it doesn't translate in globally, but we actually when we came up with the sort of concept of renaming the business, at that point we were called Paddy Power Betfair, which was two of the big well-known brands in the company. And we didn't want to become one of these like law firms that has every single partner's name in it. Becomes too long and difficult to use. So we wanted an umbrella brand. And actually we had Flutter, who was part of our stable of brands. It was a very historical business that we'd acquired a long time ago, actually from some Americans who were trying to launch a online betting business in the UK, and we'd acquired it and no longer were using it. But actually, we thought we'd bring it back to life as our the corporate holding companies.
And so those early '90s years was mostly betting in the UK.
Yeah, the origins of the business, Betfair, started in 2000, and this was one of the original peer-to-peer betting platforms. So actually, if you think about it, all these peer-to-peer platforms where people would interact with each other, Betfair was a real pioneer in that area. Obviously, liquidity becomes very important, and that business was successful. But separately, Paddy Power had started out in Ireland from the merger of three different bookmaking businesses. And they decided they needed to get together for more scale to face the challenges of English businesses coming into Ireland and competing with them. And so they decided to put the businesses together, rebrand them Paddy Power, because they realized how important marketing was. And really, back to the sort of genesis of all of our brands, the challenger notion that we have in each of our businesses was born then for Paddy Power. And they were small, but they punched above their weight with some really clever advertising and marketing. And that's what got them so well known.
Peter, I want to ask you about what I guess you would characterize as some negative side effects from your business that people suggest, such as betting addiction, bankruptcy, even suicides. Then there's the integrity of the sport, which we'll get to. But first of all, that category, let's talk about that. How seriously do you take that?
We take this very, very seriously. Everything from the way that incentives for everybody in the business are pulled together. We have responsible gambling measures for everybody in their bonuses. So this is something we sort of put our money where our mouth is. But we also invest a lot of money as well. So last year we'll have put $100 million into the research and education and treatment of trying to identify how we can get better at spotting customers who are at risk of becoming problem gamblers and intervening. So there's many customers on the platform who enjoy a flutter. They're putting their $20 on their parlay. They're enjoying watching the Rams beat the Vikings or whatever's happening in the sport that they're following. But for a very small number of customers, they can get themselves into trouble. And so we work really hard to try and identify those customers. And if necessary, we'll stop them, right? We'll block people. We won't let them participate anymore. And we're behind ROGA, which is this new industry body that's been formed in the States. And frankly, if we identify a customer who we think is at risk of becoming a problem gambler and we don't want their business anymore, we need to let the other operators know. right? And vice versa if they identify or spot a customer. So all the regulated operators can stop that customer from putting a bet on and getting themselves into trouble.
And what about that second potential problem that I mentioned, which is the integrity of the game, gambling by players, referees, cheating, and that kind of thing?
This is absolutely at the core of what we do, right? It's crucial that if people are watching a game, that they know it's down to the sort of the trajectory of the match, right? That there's nothing untoward going to happen, and the benefit we have is the amount of data and insights we get to see, right? We can spot anomalies, right? If we see in some strange, tennis game that's going on in a remote part of the world, there's a lot of money going on, and that's a very unexpected, event, and there seems to be betting on the underdog, and somehow the underdog wins, we'll be all over that. So we can spot those patterns. We have contracts with all of the major sporting leagues around the world from an integrity perspective, and we share insights and data that we see. So if we see something that we're suspicious about, we'll let them know, because we don't want it and they don't want it to happen. So it's a core part of what we do, and we spend a lot of time making sure that what people are betting on is fair.
And so you have alerted leagues and teams to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mentioned that you're a complicated business. You agreed. You have the global footprint, it's digital, payments, regulatory, unintended consequences we just talked about. What is the most important thing for you to focus on, Peter?
All of those things are absolutely true, right? But large businesses like ours always have a degree of sort of complexity in them. We're really focused on making sure that we offer our customers a fantastic experience, and that's the job of our teams around the world. And the way that we've realized that we can do that with that sort of challenger mindset is to make sure that we actually empower our local teams. So the team here in the US, FanDuel, have all of the operating levers they need to be able to win in the market. Now, if you try doing this stuff centrally, if you try and run marketing centrally, you lose the nuance of what you need to do in a local market. If I talk about football, you're immediately thinking about the Super Bowl that will be coming up in the near future. Whereas if I talk about football, some people in the UK will be thinking about the Liverpool game. Right? And so understanding the nuance of what happens locally is really important. And what we found is that even if you have to spend a bit of extra money, actually delivering what local customers need is really important. So that's why we sort of push decision-making and technology down into our local brands, and that's what sets them up to win.
Liverpool, a recent match against Nottingham Forest, which was tied at one point recently. I want to ask you about what's going on from an investor standpoint. A lot of sports companies, or some sports companies, are going public. You're seeing more and more publicly traded sports companies, and at the same time, retail investors are getting access into private investments into sports companies. Is this a good thing?
Yeah, I mean, the big theme that we see in ourselves, right, is we've moved our listing to the States. Right? So the business has historically been dual listed in London and Dublin. And in 2024, we took the decision that we were going to move our listing to the States. I think that's a function of liquidity begetting liquidity. Right? It's a phenomenon that we've seen in many different places around the world. And so, as the market-leading business, we wanted to be where the liquidity was. We are now an American business. FanDuel is half our business is absolutely critical to the future of Flutter, and so that's why we moved our listing. I think that's an important narrative that we're seeing happen at the moment. I think it's difficult if you're a smaller traded business. You don't have the right market cap. You don't get the followership. You see poor levels of liquidity, particularly in some of the European exchanges. And I think that's a challenge. And you're right. Retail investors now do have access to a lot of private businesses that they can invest in as well. But scale is crucial in our game. Right? I saw that when I first joined the company. We were no different to other big digital players who needed big scale, and so that's what we've pursued. You talked about the growth in our revenues over the time, and the scale allows us to invest in developing great products for our customers, and ultimately that's what they want to see. And these things are not easy to develop, right? They're very complex. And so you need this sort of infrastructure and investments that a business of only our size and scale can put in.
Right. And the stock has more or less responded to the growth of the company. I mean, you have a $46 billion market cap. The stock went up and down a little bit with COVID, which is maybe a one-off event, we hope. Now it's gone up more recently, now down a little bit. So what moves the stock, Peter? What do you think, sort of over the longer term?
There's lots of people who've done sort of, correlations to try and understand what the sort of underlying drivers are for businesses in our sector. I think most fundamentally, if you look at what's really sort of driven our performance, it's the top line, right? So we've grown our revenue base a lot in the last several years, and our market capitalizations followed. Looking at our sort of levels of profitability has been slightly complex because we've been investing a huge amount of money behind FanDuel. The business was profitable in 2023, became profitable, and will profitable in 2024 as well. And that's been a real inflection point. So, the EBITDA margins are growing, the net income margins are growing now a lot for the business. And we've talked about where we would see those getting to in 2027. And so I think, historically, there were questions around whether we'd ever make money. We knew that was never going to be a problem for us because of our size and scale and the operating expertise we have. But what we've seen is that we're able to translate revenue growth into growth in net income.
And my understanding is you increased what you see as the total addressable market in the United States. How big and why, very specifically, do you think it's bigger than you thought it was before?
I always say to everybody, that everything is big in America, and it has always been the case, right? And I mean, take a simple fact, right? And we have, the people who decided to price odds in America in a different way to the way they're set up everywhere else in the world. In America, you see the return you get for putting $100 down. Right? That's how odds are presented to you. Everywhere else in the world, they're presented on a decimal basis or a fractional basis, so you get the return for putting a single dollar down. So average bet sizes are bigger in America. Bet frequency is higher. Americans love sport. So when we look at the population penetration levels that we anticipate getting to in America, and we multiply that by the sort of the GDP, and we multiply that by sort of the experience we have in the market, it's what has allowed us to get to that $70 billion number for the US and Canada, which was a growth in what we saw historically. But we get to see more data, more insights. We have a large market share in the States, and that gives us real conviction behind the numbers.
And what about the people who say, oh, this is leading to the demise of our society as we know it? It's just, we're going to bet on everything. It's heading America down the drain or something along those lines.
What we provide is entertainment for our customers. I was in a taxi the other day, and the guy was bemoaning to me that, his team had let his parlay down on the last leg. He put $10 down, and he'd nearly won, his $500. And I asked him about it. He'd had his $10 of entertainment, right? I mean, watching those games, the immersion he had in it, it was very exciting for him. Now, he would rather have won his $500, but he had fantastic entertainment for it. That's what we're in the business of doing. We sell hopes and dreams and entertainment for people. When you're watching a game and you're waiting to see if that player scores a touchdown, or you need another three-pointer to happen in your basketball, or you're looking for another foul in a soccer game, whatever it is that you need, you're much more engaged in the action. And I think that's is what we do, and we add a lot of entertainment to people's lives.
I'm going to ask you some really tough questions now. Do you have kids, by the way?
I do. I have 3.
All right. So this is somewhere along the lines of what's your favorite kid, which is your favorite teams in various leagues. Fair enough?
Well, this is dangerous.
Oh, I know it is.
It's being recorded. I'm worried about it.
It's going to go out to everyone. English Premier League.
The English Premier League, it have to be Chelsea.
Okay.
That would be my local team to where I live.
Fair enough. Rugby.
But my real favourite soccer team is Leeds United. I'm from Leeds. You won't be able to tell it from my accent.
Leeds and Chelsea. Okay.
We will. No, but you asked my favourite Premier team, Premier League
right.
team.
Fair enough.
Right.
Yep. Okay.
So my favourite soccer team would be Leeds United.
Got it. Rugby.
Gloucester.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. World Cup. Soccer. World Cup is England?
Yes.
Straight up. Okay, easy. All right, let's get tougher. NBA.
It would have to be the Brooklyn Nets.
You happen to live in Manhattan or Brooklyn?
Well, it was the first team I saw play live, and I think there's always something about the first game you watch live.
Okay. What about Major League Soccer in the United States? Do you have a favorite team?
I think my kids would probably kill me if I didn't pick Miami.
Fair enough. What about baseball? Do you follow baseball at all?
I've watched the Yankees play, so if I follow my rule, then it would have to be them.
Okay, final question is the big one in the United States, NFL.
Well, look, the people we are, we spend a lot of money on the Lions this year. They were the underdogs, and they've won a lot of games. The chairman of Flutter is a big Lions fan, so I'm probably cheering on anyone who beats the Lions at the moment.
Wow. Okay, I love that. And final question, Peter. Tell us why Flutter Entertainment stock is a good value, is something that investors should buy and hold.
We've talked about the size of the market in America of 70 billion. The size of the market outside of America, and I know this is difficult to believe when you're sat in the US, but the size of the market outside America is 300 billion. Right? So there's a $370 billion opportunity. We're the number one player in America, and we're the number one player outside of America. We have a really good sort of symbiotic relationship between our different businesses. So our international division is growing fast and is supporting our US business, and vice versa. So we're the number one player. We're growing very quickly. If you look at our revenue, projected revenue growth from a consensus perspective, more than double digits. And so you look at the runway ahead of us, the size we are, and the growth prospects. There really aren't many businesses that fall into that unique place other than Flutter.
Peter Jackson, thank you so much for joining us. This is at Barrons. I'm Andy Serwer. We'll catch you next time.